inspire, empower, grab your girls and soar a little higher. Unlock the fire in you, cause real women don't bitch, no. Real women don't, 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 real women don't bitch.
Hey, thank you for joining me on the Real Women Don't Bitch podcast. This is your proud host, August Crenshaw, aka Mrs. Raw, Real, and Relentless. I am the #1 advanced mental conditioning specialist for entrepreneurs because building mental muscle is necessary in order to implement successful business strategies. This show has been created for the woman who is not excuse-driven and needs help building a profitable business. I will be interviewing women from various fields who are willing to break the silence on struggles that specifically affect female entrepreneurs. Welcome to a show where I and guest speakers from time to time share our methods that help us beast our business no matter what is going on in our lives. Whether you are an online or brick and mortar business owner, this show is for you. We will hit every angle, personal, professional, and spiritual. Why? Because on any given day, you get hit with shit from a scenario involving one, more, or perhaps all of the above. It all impacts you and your mindset towards your business. I have made it my personal mission to provide a space where we dive deep into the BS we face on a day-to-day basis. Hey, ladies, what's going on? It's your girl, August Crenshaw. I am here and I'm excited because I have a guest. That's my go-to. Seriously, I do. I always love it when I can have a sister on the podcast with me because the exchange is so beautiful. I could talk all day, but there's just something about bouncing ideas on and off a different woman. And so today is going to be a very powerful day. And the reason why it's powerful is because #1, it's Pika, y'all. I don't know how many times she's been on the podcast. Say hi to her.
Like 3 or 4. Maybe number 3, number 4, something like that. Hey, what's going on, you guys? Peek out here in Singapore, and I am so glad to be out here with my sister, August. So,
look,
yeah, I'm back. I'm back.
and it hasn't been because we've done a series either. It's like I'm just on the podcast.
Not yet.
Podcast. And so just kind of like a little brief introduction to let you guys know what's going on. The way that this podcast was birthed is because back in 2017, those of you that are listening now, because some people are watching this live in the Business Mastery group, I started the Business Mastery Summit back then. I started the Business Mastery Summit in 2017, and there was all this energy. All of these people were excited. These women were flocking to me, talking about all the stuff they wanted to do with their life and how they were going to up-level themselves in business. And I'm like, but why you ain't doing nothing? Like, after all of this powerful information, why are you not moving? And women just started opening up the floodgates and started telling me, about abusive relationships, molestation, extreme embarrassment because they had to file bankruptcy, issues with their children, the legal system, spiritual and emotional and religious hindrances, overbearing parents. I mean, just the whole gamut. And so I ended up doing a spinoff summit that was called Real Women Don't Bitch, which that is coming back in the fall. And when I did that podcast, it was about, removing the silence from struggles so that other women could see how we were able to still function, because I was one of the participants as well. I was not just a facilitator. And so there were some sensitive things that I had to share about my journey. And after that summit was over, and I had to have way less speakers, and I'm glad that I did, because it was emotionally, it was a lot to take on. I was like, more people need to know about this. And so then what ended up happening is I took the information from that summit and I created the Don't Bitch About It, Be About It book. I was like, that's still not enough. And I was like, I need to do this podcast. What can I do to insert
just laser focus, motivation, inspiration, and talk about the things that we don't talk about in business. That's what birthed the Real Women Don't Bitch podcast. And so whether it was just the type of BS that happens in business, women wanting to come out and, share what they've been through, that was what this platform was for women to share their story. And it doesn't always have to be gruesome, but it just has to be painful for you, whatever it is that happened. And today, Pika's here to say I'm using the platform for what it was actually birthed for. And so I don't really know if you understand that for me, a lot of women have been on this podcast and been very transparent about their journey, but not to the degree that you're about to be, because you're talking from the perspective of how this podcast was born. And so emotionally and spiritually, for me, that's saying a lot too. So we're not going to dig, right into the story, first, even though most of the people have known you, have met you. There's still new people that are going to come through.
Perfect.
So, because the podcast is growing, you guys. I mean,
man.
Let me, y'all know how I am. I got to throw in some corny humor or something to, take the solemn stuff and kind of up. I was checking the stats at like 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and the Netherlands was beating the USA with downloads.
How is that even damn possible? Come on, man. The Netherlands?
I had to put a picture up so people knew I wasn't lying to see that there was 38 downloads in the Netherlands and only 34 in the US at like 10 o'clock in the freaking morning. And so the podcast is spreading. The word is getting out. And so, ladies, any of you guys, when you're guests, what you're saying is, I want to be a part of the movement. I want to be a part of the movement for more women to be better equipped to be able to remain, not just claim your space in the entrepreneurial space, but remain. So talk to the people a little bit. Let them know who you are, of course, as a woman, and who you are as a business owner.
Wow. Who am I as a woman? Who am I not as a woman? I think my favorite identifier is that I'm a mom. I love being a mom. I raised my brothers. I raised my cousins. I had stepkids. I have my own little one at the moment. And that's basically my first identifier. That's how I identify myself. I'm a mom. And I love being a mom, like in every sense of the word. I love entertaining people. I love cooking. I like having people around. That's the first identifier. But outside of that, as an entrepreneur, I'm a go-getter. I'm really resourceful. I make sure that if I don't know how, I will figure it out. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I will probably get frustrated and throw things, but then eventually I will pick it back up and figure it out and make it work. What is that called? That's called gumption, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go with that. What else? I love art. Even as a little kid, I loved making things. So whether it was tracing pictures out of a coloring book to make a card out of it, because we didn't have the kind of money where we could go out and buy Hallmark. We made our own. I come from a family of talented classical dancers and singers. I don't know. There's so many things I could tell you. I'm very spiritual. I have had the opportunity to live in an environment where it was ecumenical. So we were taught to learn all of the different religions and what they were actually saying. And from a spiritual standpoint, rather than a process religion, what do you do, when, why, it was more spiritual. So I really appreciate that. And it's given me a very broad base from which to connect with other people. Absolutely. So I love seeing synchronicities in life. I love connecting with people. I've lived in 5 different countries. So again, it's all about connection for me. And you know that better than most. I love connecting people.
Yes,
so if I find out that you like something or you need something, I know somebody that got, I'll call my people to call your people and we'll get it sorted. So yeah. Yes, I like that. I love that.
Absolutely. That is all of you. And you guys, if you're not following Pika, you should. You do the Night Owl podcast, and it's on it's on SoundCloud. And so she's documenting her journey, which is like freaking phenomenal. That's where I first got a feel for you. And so I think that's important too, for people to know how this relationship was birthed between you and I. There was an individual who ran across a post that I had done, and I think she saw a live video or something I did on IG, and then she started tagging a bunch of women, like, listen to this woman here, and she tagged you. but she
Yep.
tagged you on more than one post. And
Yes, I
I
remember
mentioned
that.
something, and it was, matter of fact, it was one of my posts about the podcast. And
Uh-huh.
then I realized you had a podcast. And I went
Yeah.
and listened to your podcast. And, you know,
And this was back when I didn't think anybody was listening. I still don't think anybody's listening, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue. I'm on track to 400 by the end of this week. So yeah, we
heck
got work to
yeah.
do, man.
Yeah, so let's talk to them a little bit about, you know, from your side, what does that look like? You know, let them know how you and I connected and what our journey has been. I don't have to be great details, but just kind of, you know, to warm people up to how we got to the place that we are right now.
Honestly, I do remember that the individual that we were speaking about tagged me in a couple of posts, and she was tagging me she was trying to broaden my horizons, and I appreciate that. She was good at spotting talent and connecting people to a degree as well. But whenever she tagged me on your post, I made sure to comment on something. I wanted to watch what you were doing and then comment and say, to show you that I've been there, you know?
Yes,
I don't
you
like all these bot comments where they're like, oh, great post or great picture. And it's not even a picture. It's like a quote, like what the hell? So I want to make sure y'all know that I'm physical, like I'm real. I actually exist. This is not, you know, like some bot camera, you know,
Yeah.
there's no green screen, nothing. It's me. So when I leave a comment on your post, any of your posts, I want to make sure you understand that I actually saw what you wrote and I read the caption as well, and then I commented.
Yes. And I love
Then
that.
you know it's relevant.
Yeah.
So I think we just started talking from there, and I'm not even sure if you asked me or if I asked you, but somehow or another we got on live together on IG, and that was, you know, that was all she wrote basically. So
No, I did.
that was the beginning.
I listened to a couple of your podcast episodes, and you actually had said some things in your episode that was old that I had just said in a podcast episode that I was like, yes, we're on the same vibe. And I snuck in on one of your IG lives, and I was like, I like her. So I was like, we should do a live together. I was like, you're powerful.
She asked, and I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I'll try anything once. And then here we are. We do lives all the time now. And yeah. I am proud to say that it's been a great relationship since. You've been more than just my friend. You've been my mentor. You've been my coach. You've brought me out of some, you know, confusion in the last 2 years, and I appreciate that. And it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, it is.
I like our relationship. I really like it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely not. Because I was just in tears talking to you about something barely 24 hours ago.
We usually end up in tears and then we end up laughing, so it's all right. It's all good.
You know, because
we can't be serious for too long.
Yeah. No, and the music and the movies, that's always going to change.
That's our language, man.
Of whatever it is we were feeling, the joy is going to come back out because of some silly movie scene quote or a song. And so when we started, though, working together in the coaching relationship, this is when you let me know that it was the first time that you decided to dig a little deeper and to be more open and transparent. That was when I introduced you to the Uplevel Your Boss Mindset.
Yes, ma'am.
But it was not, you know, like it was for the people that, you know, attended my workshop. It wasn't like a wham, bam, you did this, okay. It was like, no, right, because it was a one-to-one coaching relationship. And
right.
So I was like, no, I need to know what you wrote, what you did. And I still remember to this day, you were like, yeah, well, you know, y'all don't really have nothing. I was like, well, no, yes, you do. And then all of a sudden you went from I have nothing to like, like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of information. And I know for me, that was when a huge trigger hit, because you and I realized that we had a lot of things in common with our lives and in our first marriage. And that's when you started, you know, really opening up about some of the things that you experienced and without telling your story, but just kind of just getting, because so many women
in bits and pieces, like I always do.
We both had been in previously abusive relationships and been married and divorced and all of that stuff. And so that was part of what increased the bond. And that's another reason why we're here. You have to have that outlet to let your story out. But a lot of times you want to go ahead and say it where it can be heard, kind of like the AA meetings and stuff like that, because there's power in us hearing each other's story. So if you're ready, I'd like for you to go ahead.
I am, but real quick, I also want to mention this, if you don't mind. I could definitely get on a podcast and tell my story. And I've done many interviews with other people where they're trying to get me to tell my story, but it's all about comfort zone. How comfortable am I with you to tell you all of who I am? I know you for a fact. If you feel me pulling back, you're going to ask that question. You're not going to let me back up. Whereas other people, like I recently did an interview with American Real, and I'm happy I did an interview with American Real, but that wasn't all that I had to share. It was kind of like the way he was asking the questions, they were relevant questions. There were things that I needed to say, but it wasn't the time or the place, and I could feel it in my spirit. That was not where I needed to tell this story.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first time ever,
yeah,
I need August to help guide me through this process, but I need to tell this story.
Absolutely. And we're gonna push through this. So this will probably be one of the longest podcast episodes that I've done, because we're gonna do it until it's done. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna do it until it's done. So I want you to go ahead and take the dive. I want you to delve in, and I want you to start where you believe that you should start. Of course, closer to the beginning, because we've already done the, popcorn pieces here and there.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. Let's dive in. So, Pico.
So for those of you who don't know, I was born in Singapore. I didn't always live here, but I was born here. My mom and dad were in an arranged marriage, and at the time they were in love with other people. But neither one of them had the balls to stand up to their parents and say, no, I'm not interested in this arranged marriage. I'm in love with somebody else. So, of course, they got married. My mom had a couple of issues that she had to deal with, and she was upset about having to marry someone else, and she thought she was in love. And, of course, it wasn't what she thought it should have been. And she found herself in a very difficult place. She tried to take her own life, and although that part is not my story to tell, I kind of feel like I need to tell you why, so you understand why my mother did what she did next. So she tried to take her life, and my dad stopped her. And from then onwards, it's been a weird relationship between the two of them. It's almost like she owes him one still. So from there, they had me, but my dad was getting ready to go off and study. So he left for London and said my mom had to come with him. So she had the difficult decision to leave me behind. My grandparents raised me. I was here. She has 4 brothers. All 4 brothers are still in Singapore. And so I kind of grew up with like 4 dads. It was kind of cool. But it wasn't the same thing because they had to cart me everywhere they went. My parents weren't here. My mom would fly in for birthdays and stuff. But I remember like early memories where I would tease her like she was my auntie and not my mom. And I knew it hurt her feelings, and I wasn't trying to hurt her feelings. But somehow I was trying to tell her that I wasn't happy about the situation. And that would continue to haunt me for a very long time. It was like, how could you leave me behind?
Yeah.
My brother, my middle brother, was born 4 years later, and he had the least amount of time with my mom. He was left behind after a month. So me and my grandmother took care of him. He was on the small side. He needed a lot of protecting. He wouldn't eat. So it was stuff like, if I didn't drink the powdered milk that they had for him, he wouldn't drink it. So I took on guardian status for him. I wanted to make sure that he was okay. So I would fight his battles for him. I would protect him the rest of his life, until he got to college, of course. So from there, I was about 5. He was about 1. And my dad had finished school, and he called for us. So basically, my grandparents had to drop us off in London. So we flew from Singapore to London. And I remember up until that point, I never lied. I mean, I got in trouble plenty. I mouthed off, and I had attitude issues. I was having fun. I was spoiled. But once I moved to London, it was like, whoa, complete change of atmosphere. I didn't know the people. I didn't know any of the relatives that we lived with in London. So I started lying a lot. And I had never lied before. I used to lie all the time. I remember my mom at the time, I think because of the way she had to raise me, she wasn't allowed in the first 5 years where that bond was developed. So it was almost like I was in competition with her for my dad's attention, I think. I would act up. I wasn't comfortable in that situation. That wasn't home for me. I was still trying to feel you test your boundaries. Like, am I allowed to do this? What would happen if I told her I made a mistake? Would I get into trouble? So yeah, I started lying. But the way she handled it was she got really upset to the point that she would do things like she would lock us out of the house in London at night in winter. I remember once that my cousins would come in from Birmingham, and if they hadn't arrived when they did, I probably would have been out there a lot longer than I was. My cousin was like, Kalaperima, which is like, big aunt, do you mind letting, her come in so we can play? So it was things like that. It was very difficult for me. So we were there for about 2 years. And my dad decided, all right, well, let's go start out fresh somewhere. And he decided, well, let's, it's almost like he threw a dart or something. He said, let's go move to Australia. So I moved to Australia. I was about 7. My little brother was, he was about 3. So we moved to Australia. Lucky for me, my dad's youngest brother and his family moved out as well. So we all lived in the same house together. And that was probably a good 4 years that we were all together in the same house, which was nice because until then it was just me and my brother. But we had 2 cousins that were there. There was always an adult around. It was a different atmosphere. It was nicer. It was a little more family oriented. But we still moved around a lot while we were in Australia. I remember in Australia itself, I think I went to 4 or 5 different schools in the 4 years that I was there. And I got really good at academics. I got really good about making sure I scored straight A's. I was good with the teachers. It was what I knew how to do. And that would continue the rest of my life. I was good in school because I knew exactly what the teacher expected of me. Socially, not so much. Super awkward. Always a new kid in school, which you think was cool until I opened my mouth, and I was super dorky and didn't fit in anywhere. Didn't have the accent until like a couple of years later. So Camille would appreciate this. I understand what it means to fit in with the dialect, the accent, the slang of the country or whatever. It took me a little bit, but I got there. So I got really good at reinventing myself. So whatever was cool at the last school, when I moved to a new school, I kind of adopted or tried to see if I could use it. And if it didn't, I just kept reinventing myself. I'm not sure what happened, but shortly after we moved to Australia, my mom got pregnant again. And once my youngest brother was born, I'm not sure what happened to this day, but my mom, my dad, and my youngest brother moved to Adelaide, which is South Australia. So it was a completely different state. And for 5 months, I was away from my youngest brother. I remember when we finally moved down there to be with him, and he didn't recognize me. This was the baby. I'd washed his butt, changed his diapers, fed him. He was like my own kid. I was 10 when he was born. So he was like mine. And when he didn't recognize me, it was really difficult for me because I felt like I was being abandoned all over again. Not only did my parents leave me for 5 months, but my brother didn't recognize who I was. And that was really tough for me. Let's see. From Australia, we were there for a whole year. My dad decided he was going to leave halfway through and go to Indonesia and start off somewhere again, like brand new again. He ended up having a great position as a vice president of a textile company, which means in Indonesia, because the currency is so low, it's very low compared to the dollar, means you can have a maid and a driver and a car provided by the company as well as tuition. So I went to Jakarta International School. We moved to Indonesia and I lived there for a year. In our culture, when you get your period, it's a big deal. They want to, do a big ceremony, kind of announce it to the world that she's eligible or whatever. Oh, so embarrassing. But after that, my dad realized that we hadn't seen his mom in a very long time. And that's only because my grandmother on his side actually flew down to Indonesia to meet us. We hadn't seen her in a very long time. And he decided, well, why don't we go out to the States for the summer and check it out? Go stay with her, visit your cousins, see what it's like out there. We stayed the summer. I attended dance camp for the very first time. And at the end of the summer, they were like, well, school's starting up soon here in the US because, August to June is when the school year runs, whereas everywhere else it's like January to mid-November. So they were like, well, do you want to go to school here? And I said, look, okay, I will. It's fine. I don't mind moving one more time, but this would be the last move I make. I'm not moving again. Because at that point I was getting into 8th grade and I didn't want to jeopardize moving again during my high school or secondary school years and trying to get into college because I moved around so much too. So finally, yes, they said yes. And I was in the States for 20 years. And that was all of the physical movements of my life. Suffice it to say that there were a lot of other experiences that kind of shaped who I am in between all of those moves too, though.
Right. I want to interject really quickly, and I definitely feel you, not to the same extreme, but we have the same commonality that my mother gave me to my paternal grandfather at 18 months. And then in one season, they made my father take me in. I lived in Garden City, Kansas, Springfield, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri. I went to about 14 schools between kindergarten up until I finally graduated. And it was honestly only from the 8th grade to high school that I graduated from the same school. And so I realized that it was very difficult for me to care about holding on to memories or people, not just because I was angry, because I was separated from stuff. I wasn't conditioned. So when people talk about having friends for 20 years and we went to high school together, you know, kind of like I couldn't have that, you know what I'm saying, from being shipped around a lot, and which meant that a survival technique for people like that is to say, and I'm like you, I'm a hard lover. So I love hard, but at the same time, if your heart keeps getting broken, then that means that you're really, really good at cutting people off. Because life cuts them off from you anyway. So for you, it's kind of like, well, shitty. It's only a matter of time before you're not here in my life anymore anyway. And since you're shitty, I'll just cut you off or whatever. And so there's a lot of emotional dynamics. And sometimes we look at people and we like to try to gauge what their values are for relationships, not realizing that a lot of it has to do with social conditioning, because everybody wasn't raised to be stable or to stay in one spot long enough. But so I get that. That is part of what shapes you. But at the same time, the brilliant thing is, right? Yours was more cultural. Mine was really more like the Black versus white, country versus city, as opposed to like, from Australia to London to Singapore. I mean, it's a much, much more culturally diverse moves, but at the same time, you get characteristics that are good, like being able to have stronger relatability to people from all walks of life.
I've never met a stranger, but it's been really hard to keep that long-term piece of it. I can make friends. I don't know about keeping them.
But we know why but like we just said, we know why the long-term piece is there. And the other thing is too, is that you can lose some of yourself, right? So on one hand, you do. Because you've never been able to just sit somewhere and be you, you're constantly adapting to your environment, that you never really get a chance to know who you are. So it's a lot of different things that happened in your life as far as the moving is concerned. But you and your father didn't have the most beautiful relationship.
Nope.
And so what does that look like with you dealing with your dad and this disconnect, but yet at the same time warring for his attention? You got some strong dynamics in this story.
So let's back it up a little bit. So let's back it up to London, when I started noticing things. So in my eyes, I mean, I've grown up with 4 uncles. All 4 uncles were married. My grandparents were married, and they might not be lovey-dovey, but their dynamic worked. I could tell that both people listened to each other. They had like a groove they fell into every day. They treated each other with respect, and that's what I was expecting when I went to London. When I got to London, and mind you, I had a little brother that I had in tow, that I was trying to make sure that he was staying out of trouble while I was getting into trouble. My dad is one of those gregarious, center of attention types. He's a Sagittarius. He is the 5th of 8 children. He likes being noticed. He likes to be important. And I think that's probably one of his top priorities when it comes to emotional needs or physical needs. He needs to be important. So I would notice things like we'd always have people over. It was always a party at our house. And my mom would spend her time in the kitchen making icing and cakes and stuff like that. And that was cool. But whenever it came time to, just before they leave, they all take pictures before they leave, right? It would always be this situation where he'd have his arm around one girl and his arm around my mom, but he'd be facing the girl and my mom be facing him. So you see it all in still images that he doesn't look like he's happy with my mom, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And it wasn't until like way later that I'm looking back and I'm like, damn, okay. I did notice it, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I was already in like foreign territory. I didn't know what to say. So I guess it's from there that I started noticing stuff. We moved to Australia and I was like, all right, cool. I have a family. This is a family unit. We can do things like on a Saturday morning, everybody come jump in the bed, my parents' bed or whatever, and chill out or whatever. Sleep in. Even though we were up early, we'd go like bug our parents, and then my mom would get up to go make coffee, and we would just like hang out in the bed. But little by little, I noticed that his behavior changed. And at first I brushed it off like, oh, he's half asleep, he's not paying attention, but he would move me. I have 2 little brothers at that point, and he would move me. He would move me in front of him, and my other two brothers would be behind him. And he would do thoughtless things like place my hand on his penis. At which point I would, like, once I realize what's going on, it's like, all right, I don't want to be hugged by you anymore. I'm going to get up and go see what mom's doing in the kitchen. Let me just extricate myself from this situation. And obviously I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't say anything at the time. In Australia, it's really convenient to rent a house that already has a pool in it. It's very normal because, you know, the Tropic of Cancer, I think it is. Are we on the Tropic of Cancer where we were? We lived in Queensland. So it was really hot. Most of the houses that you can rent always have a pool in the back, which means he would teach us how to swim. But his idea of teaching me how to swim is for me to lay on his stomach to learn how to float while holding his dick, which is, I wasn't comfortable with it, but I still didn't know what to do. But we were out in public at that time, and I needed to make sure that, you know, no one caught me doing any of this stuff because I didn't feel comfortable doing it and I knew it was wrong. So I would move as fast as possible. Luckily, it was nothing further than that, but still, it kind of messed me up a little bit because I started noticing sexuality everywhere, and I kind of wish I didn't. Everything became sex-oriented. It changed the way I saw the world. And even then, like even in Australia, because we had a pool now, which means our parties got a little bit wilder, we would be told to go downstairs and not come upstairs while the party was going on. But that doesn't mean he didn't have a bar in the house that had interesting paraphernalia, such as naked woman-shaped glasses, shot glasses of certain genitalia. Like, you know, it's novelty stuff, but it kind of plays into who he was the whole time. He would have birthday cakes for his friends that was in the shape of a naked woman, you know, and we were all of us kids are like, oh, what's that? We want to see. We're curious. I mean, what do we know? So I tried to put that aside and carry on for my life. But looking back now and connecting back with some of those people I grew up with, I realized that I allowed people to treat me a certain way. Whereas if I had never had that experience with my father, I would have put my foot down. I would have said something. But as it is, that line had become very gray, and I didn't know how to respond, so I just let it happen.
So was it something that was every once in a while? Was it just a habitual part of your life, even if you tried your best not to do it? So now you don't go in the room or you don't get in the bed as often, but did he impose in any form to make sure that those occurrences still happen?
No, he didn't, but he would make stupid and snide comments. I remember once we were in, like I said, I attained age is the term in our culture. I got my period, and we were supposed to have this ritual where I'm covered, but they're supposed to pour water on me. It's a blessing. They bless the water, they pour the water on me, they're cleansing me, you know, blessing me for long life and strength and all this stuff going forward. But he would do dumb stuff like, I mean, can you imagine? We're just developing breasts. It's already achy and painful and weird, you know, uncomfortable. You don't want no one to notice nothing because it's not where it should be, but it's getting there and you're like, ugh. Yeah. But he would say stupid shit like, oh, your mosquito bites are growing. And I'm like, really? Like, this is, hi, how are you? It could be any one of 1,000 things you could say to me, but this is what you choose to notice. And it's always been like that. But like I said, I didn't know what to say. I didn't mention anything, but I was just uncomfortable around him. But it was an understood thing. When there are men in the house, you don't wear short skirts or shorts. You don't allow yourself to be seen as comfortable where you can sit any kind of way. You have to sit a certain way if there are men in the house. And that includes your brothers and your father. So that's part of the cultural, what is that? The stigma. This the way we were raised. You don't act that way around men. You don't dress that way around men. You always covered up to your knees at least.
Yeah, I don't even want to try to imagine, you know, and your culture is still very strict. They're very stringent. And so to even understand what your mind was going through, it's uncomfortable, period. But to be in a culture where there are specific behaviors and you are already trained to dress and be modest and all of that, and to still have to deal with that says a lot. It says a lot about the upbringing. So what does this look like? Because eventually you are going to open up and say something to somebody. did you?
I did. My first interaction with a guy, like an actual interaction where he pretended to like me. He didn't actually like me. It was one of those down low things where when we were not in school, we could mess around, but if we were in school, I didn't exist. I was like the plague. But it was because of that situation that I started remembering things that I'd blocked out. And at that point, I was maybe 14 or 15 when it happened. And I sat my mom down and I told her, and this was hard for me because at that time, she and I were fighting about everything. Now, something you need to understand is when I went to school in Singapore, in London, and in Australia, every school had a uniform. Indonesia did not. And that was the first time I ever had a school where I didn't have a uniform. But my mom, in her infinite wisdom, was like, no, you need to focus on schoolwork. I don't want you worrying about what you're going to wear to school. I'm going to give you a uniform. So she gave me 2 pairs of shorts. One was a denim shorts and the other one was a pair of slacks shorts from another school that was like a leftover uniform. There was a white collared button down t-shirt that I had to wear with the blue slacks. And then there was a Jurassic Park t-shirt that I had to wear with the denim shirt. So suffice it to say, I was not popular, and I could not open my mouth and say I had a crush on anybody because the first thing they would say is, yeah, Jurassic Park, right, like you have a chance. So it was awesome. It was fun. So I went from that situation to living in the States where I felt color. I'd never felt color before. I felt color. I went to a school in Farmville, Virginia. It used to be Prince Edward Academy, which was a white-only school. It had just become privatized and it allowed more people to attend. I graduated in a class of 64, so it was a really small school. And that school didn't have a uniform either. But luckily for me, my mom at that point decided, okay, you can wear what you need to wear. But I don't want, there were certain restrictions. I can't wear shorts. I can't wear short skirts. It's either jeans or long pants and a shirt. And then the shirt couldn't be tight either. Where was I going with this? Oh, so yeah,
But back to your conversation, because you set your mother down at 14 to say, hey.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So my mom used to fight me about everything. I wasn't allowed to do my own hair. If I did my hair, I had to do it in the morning and then go to school. And I came back, I had to be the same way. So she was very strict about what I could and couldn't do. I was warring with being Eastern, but being raised in the West. So for me to actually open my mouth and sit my mother down and tell her, hey, I remember this, I think, and it's bothering me.
Mm-hmm.
For me to even have the courage to sit her down like that was a big deal because we fought about everything. If my brothers got in a fight, we fought about it because I'm supposed to be taking care of my brothers. So yeah, I sat her down and she looked stunned. And then the first thing she did, which is what she always does, she called my aunt. Now, if I get in trouble with my mom, within 5 minutes of her yelling at me, she's going to call my aunt and she's going to tell her that I screwed up. And then my aunt's going to yell at me. And my aunt's going to tell somebody else and they're going to yell at me. It's like village raises a child, literally.
Yeah.
But in this regard, I kind of wish she hadn't because she's always been influenced by my aunt. She's not one of those people that thinks for herself. She's always gone with the flow because she hates confrontation. And I don't blame her. Looking back and understanding where she started to where she was when I told her all these things, I understand. I forgive her. It doesn't make it right, but what can I do? She did what she could with what she knew. She'd never, ever experienced anything like this before. She came from a good family, a really good, well-respected family. So I told her, and, she told everybody. She had to consult, the family basically and see what to do. And she finally called my dad. And even up until she called my dad, I wasn't sure if I was blowing this out of proportion. Did I hear it on a movie somewhere? Was I like assimilating stuff from, like, what the hell? It wasn't until I heard his voice and him yelling at her, talking about how dare she say these things, is she trying to break up the family, that I got my confirmation. And I was like, damn, I kind of was hoping I'd made it all up, but nah, it's real.
Wow.
That imagery of, a decent family is not what I thought it was at all.
Wow. You can keep, sorry about that. I just realized I don't see any of it. I think people are commenting and I haven't had the chance, or maybe that was something else. But no, you're good. I thought that was something else that popped up because I've been trying to pay attention if somebody makes a comment so that I can respond to it. I know that one of the reasons why you didn't necessarily speak up right away, and even not necessarily, you didn't even tell your story even up until this point, because we also have that same similarity. A lot of women aren't speaking up about what happened to them in their upbringing because it isn't ugly enough. You know what I'm saying? You
I
kind
had that. I spoke to Dawn about that. Because once I heard her story, I was like, holy cow, does this even qualify? Like, I don't know. And she was like, no, it changed the way you saw the world. Yeah,
yeah,
it qualifies.
and
And honestly speaking, you guys, in here, I feel safe telling you it was my father, whereas right now, I cannot tell the world it was my father
you're
because
getting
I
there.
will destroy so many lives to do that.
Now, well, why do you now? Because we've talked about this already.
Hmm.
Why is telling your story, in your view, the destruction of so many lives? How do you rationalize that? Help me understand what that means. Help them
Do you know
understand.
how many lies it took to keep him safe? Which means when I open my mouth and tell them exactly who it was, my mom is now a liar. The people who knew when it happened and didn't say anything, they are all liars.
Do you believe in
His
karma?
sister knew and didn't say anything.
You have respect for so many religions and cultures and spiritual bases. Do you believe in karma?
Oh, hell yeah. And I hope I live to see it fall out on him.
So, but if you believe in karma, karma is not dictated by humanity. It's a spiritual
It
precept.
is, which means it doesn't have to come from me.
But you telling your story is still not the destruction. People lie every day and still aren't destroyed. People get found out, and sometimes them getting found out is what makes them humble enough to say, it's sad when people have to get caught in order to finally own up to what they've done. But the person that told the lie is responsible for the outcome. Why are you still carrying that burden?
Because I love my mother, and I will set the world on fire to protect her.
Have you ever held a lie? Have you ever told a lie and you knew you kind of sort of told the truth, but you were kind of tormented between, I don't want to tell the truth? Now, this is concealing something. I'm talking about completely different. Have you ever known something and you could have told the truth and maybe got somebody out of trouble and you didn't, or anything? Can you think of
Yep. Hmm.
something? And how did that make you feel to hold the lie?
It made me feel dirty. I was an accomplice. I might as well have been the perpetrator.
So you had to live with the burden of that, correct?
Hmm.
Do you think your mother loves you?
Yeah,
Do you think she's burdened by holding the lie?
I know she is, which is why I don't want to make her life any more difficult.
Well, hold up.
My mother lives by the premise that she has to hold this family together because my dad has been running away for I don't know how long.
So she's really not holding anything together. She's holding an image, a
Yep.
look together. But what
Hmm.
what I'm getting to the thick of is that your mother's living with the constant pain every day of living a lie. So if you coming out, are you destroying her or are you freeing her? And then just like with everything else we deal with in life, we have to deal with the fallout and the discomfort as we heal. Why you look at life like that for everybody else in every other situation. So let's dig into that. Why is that different with you and your mother?
Because I know it will destroy her. I know it will. Because I've broached the situation a couple of times. My mom, let me explain. My mom loves my dad. She feels indebted to him for having saved her life way back then. She's paid that price and then some, but she doesn't know what to do about it. Like, she can't stop him. He's very happily living his own whatever. He's in a different country now. Any chance he gets, he'll send her away, and then stupid stuff will happen. He owned a resort in Indonesia, and I went to visit against my will. I went to visit because I wanted to see my mother. And I speak Bahasa Indonesia. I understand. So when they were talking shit about my dad, I knew exactly what had happened, but we don't have proof. We can't say nothing. Why? Because he's a big man in that town. He's well respected. He has clout, whatever.
Have you ever sat your mother down and said, you know what, just between you and I, can I talk to you about the true dynamic with you and Dad?
I've tried a lot. My dad is a taboo subject with my mother, which is why I don't want to make her life difficult. But I already sat her down and I told her, look, if he passes before you, fine. But you pass before him, we're done. He will lose everyone. He will lose. She's the only thing keeping him grounded to this earth, to his family.
Okay.
My mom is one of those people that really wants to make sure that I show him love. He gets upset that his children are estranged. He will not ask the right questions and be like, well, why? But I have to call him every year on his birthday. Anytime I see him, I am expected to go and hug him and give him a kiss and tell him I love him.
So you torment yourself for the sake of her keeping a lie together.
I would happily throw it in his face and see what happens, but she's going to one that's going to catch it, not me.
But why do you have to throw anything in his face? Why can't you?
If I would even ask him.
I'm not trying to be.
No.
You know what I'm doing.
No.
Why,
I know.
Why, when he comes, can you not be humble and respectful? Hi. But why do you have to hug him? Why do you have to kiss him? Why do you have to show any other emotion? And I know about your culture and all of this stuff, but I'm coming at you because you are in that culture right now, speaking with a voice when it is uncommon for a woman to speak. You are fighting things and you are kicking against the culture when you see someone wronged or you see someone harmed. So the culture, your upbringing, all of that can't be the excuse. And I hear what you're saying about your mom, but it's one thing to say, okay, I'm not going to expose that you were a liar all of my life. And I'm not going to hold this against you and be mad at you because I can see things from your perspective. But why would you energetically and physically allow yourself to be taken advantage of and to be reviolated and to relive those dark moments? What's stopping Pika from standing up for Pika?
My mom.
You're telling
I will not hear the end of it if I do not call him on his birthday. I will not hear the end of it if I do not give him She will stand there and give me hand signals in front of him, because I know that when I was pregnant, for example, I came home for a baby moon. I wanted to come home and see the family. He flew in to see me. But of course, when I was in the lift with him, the first comment out of his mouth was, oh, your boobs got bigger. Well, no shit, Sherlock. That's what happens when you get pregnant. Did you not have 3 kids? Like, what is this, new to you? But for him to even say that, I was hoping it would be different, but for him to even say that, reaffirmed, yep, he's not going to change. Not in this lifetime. So what I did the rest of the trip to avoid being near him was to claim that I was sleepy. Because pregnant people are sleepy, right? So I slept. I wasn't actually sleepy, but that's how I avoided him.
So, this conversation, you said you would allow me to do this with you.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're going to give me a chance to explain this.
Sure.
The hard-hitting, short version of this is you do know that based on what you teach other people.
This is a contradiction?
Let's use an even uglier word. You being a hypocrite.
Yep.
Because number one, you can't tell someone else's story. You can't dictate their pain. You can't be responsible for their interpretation, but you're tormenting yourself. And if I was being tormented, you would tell me to stand. If I was afraid, you would tell me not to be fearful. If I was dishonoring my truth, you would tell me to walk in it. And so this is not something that could just be completely diced up in an hour and a half conversation between the two of us. But I want you to reflect on that. And I want to share something with you, and I'm going to be sharing it with the audience too. For the people that have been following me long enough, I remember when I had to go ahead and have that clash. And I had my clash in my 30s when I'm like, okay, somebody's got to give me some answers. Why is it that my grandmother raised me? Why? And, it was not good that as a young woman, not only did I know that my grandmother got me at 18 months, I heard the story and I saw the picture of me. My mother lived in Chicago, Illinois, and that's where she birthed me in St. Louis, immediately went to Chicago, Illinois, and then she sent me back at 18 months. She made the phone call, Mrs. Smith, if you want your grandbaby, I'm going to be on the bus stop at this time. You need to come and get her, and if you don't, then that's it. So she drove all the way back to St. Louis, believing that one of them would come and get me, but what if nobody did come and get me? That meant that I was going to be sitting on that bus stop to end up being in the system. I had on oversized clothes, some of it with the cuffs in the bottom of the pants like this thick, folded up like 3 times. I smelled like piss. I heard the story over and over again. So that's not making me think that you even took care of me when you had me.
Right.
But luckily, my grandmother did get me, and I heard about how she soaked me in the tub and she scrubbed me down and she washed me up and combed my hair and got self-piercing earrings and stuff like that and treated me like I was her doll and raised me. But just like you, I still had to war with that. But why wasn't I good enough? And then you had 4 other kids after me and you raised all of them. And when I went to my mother and said, I don't even want to blame you. But I do want to understand my story. Can you please tell me what was going on and why you did this? To this day, my mother will not have a conversation around it. She will not talk about it. She won't talk about what happened with her ex-husband. She won't talk about how when she finally divorced him and she did move back to St. Louis, she didn't fight to get me back. She never filled out actual documentation. She could have got me back, but she didn't. And I finally had to decide to have that conversation. Now, for me, it was because of something centered around me being able to be a better parent for my children. And I had to seek resolve with these answers. And so what I decided was that I was not going to live all of the rest of my days of my life not acknowledging my story for the fullness of what it was, for her to have a false sense of peace. Because my mama don't have any peace regardless. The fact that she can't talk about what happened, even if whether she has a justifiable answer or not, is her choosing to live in her version of reality. And so I get it. I get it that it will hurt her to have the conversation, and I won't damn her name, and I won't go out of my way to say, oh, look at, and I very rarely even say my mom's name so that people that don't know them, they won't be like, ooh, you have to know me to know who she is. But I'm not like saying blankety blank, Miss Mama, you did, because I'm not trying to throw her under the bus. But part of how we heal is accountability for our actions. And if we choose not to take that accountability, then we choose to subject ourselves to hell right here on earth. And so if you keep on not living in your truth, if you don't tell your story to protect your mother, then you are subscribing yourself to a version of hell on earth. If you don't free yourself fully from the story for the sake of one man, you are costing the lives of many. I have to be free, because in my freedom, that allows me to better be able to see, to perceive, to have compassion, and to love, and to help other individuals. There's going to reach a point, and this is not just you, this is any other woman that's listening, that, because we do this, don't we, ladies? We try to function in our dysfunctions and still build our businesses. But when that moment comes when we can be a beacon of light, we're going to eventually end up working with someone in some kind of scenario where we're going to end up being crippled, and we're going to give the wrong information or be incapable of giving the right information, because we're going to crash with our own principles. And us growing a layer and taking off a layer is us allowing other women to do that. You can, with integrity and decency, make sure that you love your mother, you hug your mother, that you're there for her, that you say, I understand, and do all of that. And you can even defend her in front of other people. And it doesn't have to be the fallout that you say that it is. But a lot of times what we think something will be is not what it will be. We'll think it's going to be really bad. And it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. We'll think things will be okay. You'd be like, damn, I didn't think that shit was going to happen like that. But you can't get to that place, because part of what you're doing is you're buffering broaching the conversation and the incident, because you are creating a narrative. You are creating it. I know what her previous behavior has said. I know what you believe that dictates, but she still hasn't had to crash with the actual reality of what this looks like for being accountable. You're not giving her the opportunity to acknowledge what she's done and to have real freedom and to have her spirit go through the cleansing and the purification process. You're denying her that. She's denying it because she could always come out before you, but you're an accomplice to that as well. You know, that's
she and I have had conversations. She understands what she's done. She feels powerless and she understands. She could have taken a different route. She didn't. She and I are okay. Where the problem at the moment is, do I say something to somebody that's going to, like, he's going to fall off his back anyway, like it never happened? And then was it worth the aggravation or not? Because what's going to end up happening is he's going to come at her.
I think you can handle him for her.
I could if we lived in the same country, August. I don't.
Okay. And I'm just helping. I'm just saying stuff so you can flush everything out.
No, I'm glad. That's why I wanted you to help guide me on this process. At the moment, yeah, I'm living a little bit of a hypocrite's life, and I hate that, but I don't live with them.
And
I'm here in Singapore by myself.
And please understand, for everybody that's listening, we all have these moments. So there's like, and anybody that knows me, they know that there's like no judgment in this at all.
And this is meant to be full disclosure, so you understand exactly what goes through people's heads when they go through something like this.
Exactly. And that's why we're having this conversation. This conversation, like I said, is far from over. So, you know, we kind of really pick that thing apart, and there's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to wrestle with. I don't want to keep you on here forever and a day, but to help people understand, though, I think that this is important. We need to fast forward, not necessarily skip anything, because that's really not the worst part of your story. You know, the dynamic change.
I don't know what is the worst part.
and yeah, well, you know, and not without judging what's the worst, but and I'm saying that from the simple fact. So let me just go ahead and I'll disclose, quote unquote, my dirty laundry. You and I both have similar backgrounds, that we were exposed to some sexual things at a very young age that we should not have seen. And while we may not have been penetrated, our view on life, the world, our body, our esteem, and all that stuff is different. And so for me, it looked like, well, I can have sex with whoever I want to, whenever I want to. I don't never need a man for anything other than for him to screw me, because I can make my own money, I can pay my own bills, not realizing that I was demeaning who I really, really was. I wasn't allowing myself to be seen or viewed as a woman, a wife, a mother, and all of that stuff. And I ended up, because I had no real value for myself, because this is what we need to understand. When you deal with certain levels of abuse, regardless what level it is, it chips away at your value for self. And when I thought that I had it going on and I had risen up a level, I realized that I didn't value myself as much as I thought, because I ended up being married to somebody who it went from pushing and shoving to, you know, a bunch of other shit. And then I ended up having to get divorced, and we only stayed together for 2 years. So you had to deal with not having value in yourself. And so what are some of the other unfortunate things that would happen in your life that make the abuse trickled into something else through someone else? That's what usually happens.
So we'll go back to high school. At this point, I'm back in the States. And like I said, before I came out to my mom, she and I were fighting about everything. She wanted to control everything about me, because she had this idea. When she was growing up, she wasn't allowed to smile in pictures. It was considered fast of her if she showed her teeth in the picture. So that's the background she came from. Fast forward to my life, and I wanted to let my hair down and go to school. That's not acceptable. I have to have my hair braided up. I have to have it in a ponytail, and it has to be the same way that it was in the morning that it was in the evening. And it got to a point where I just could not live in the West and be Eastern and be okay. I was suicidal at that point. I remember my brother came in and caught me because I was trying to strangle myself. And at that point, I couldn't live in the same house with my mom. So lucky for me, my grandmother lived close by. One of my aunts lived close by. And I took turns living at either one of their houses because we just couldn't live under the same roof. Got through high school, got a scholarship to Bridgewater. I went to Bridgewater College, and in school, I thought, okay, I'm going to learn how to be on my own and figure things out for myself. And that was fine until I met a guy. And at that point, it was like, I wanted really badly to be his everything. So I did that. I did everything possible. I watched all the girls around me, and, you know, girls that do stuff like, oh, the guys are going out. I'm going to have a stomach ache and make a big scene because I don't want him going out in case he goes meet somebody else. You know, all those little stupid things that girls do. And I thought, you know what? The guys complain. I've always been one of the guys. So I heard the guys complain. They talk shit about the girls. And I'm not about to be one of those girlfriends. And I learned real fast, like whenever it was a one-horse town. I mean, if the boys went out and the girls went out, we'd end up at the same damn club. There was only one club. And I wasn't one of those girls that needed to be, you know, seen the whole time. I didn't need him to come up and be with me the rest of the night. If you saw me, save me a dance. Acknowledge that you see me here. I'm going to dance with your friends. You're going to end up dancing with my friends. I'm not being disrespectful, but save me a dance. Show them that you actually was still together. Nope. His face would change. He'd look all grumpy. And eventually, to avoid that situation, I just wouldn't go out. I would wait for him to come home to me. And that kind of carried on for a long time. And that was the first relationship I'd ever been in. I was with him for almost 7 years. He didn't ask me to marry him until year 6.5, something like that. But to find out he'd been cheating on me the whole time, I had no idea. So I left him. But the big part of that relationship was 3 years into the relationship, I got pregnant. And me, my only aspiration in life was to be a mom. I didn't have any career goals at all. I wanted to be a mom because I figured, you know, why have a career goal when you get to be all of it as a mom? You are a chef, you're a dressmaker, you're a medic, you're all these things. I wanted to be a mom. And judging by my background, I knew that a child's love is unconditional. And I thought that's all I needed. But then I saw his face and I saw his reaction and I was like, wow, I'm ruining his life. He was like, I have to drop out of football. I can't play football no more. And it became all about him. And I was like, I'm going to do something that I don't want to do, but it's because I was hell-bent on not being a single mom. Now, you all know that I lived in Yogaville. I grew up with Swami Satchidananda. He was a big, big influence in my life. My mom told him I was pregnant, and he said, look, you made a mistake. You're pregnant. Don't make another mistake and get rid of that child. And that summer, I did get rid of the baby, and I avoided him the rest of the summer. Wow. I remember it wasn't even a week after the abortion, and my mom was like, stop moping around the house, you need to go get a job. So I would walk 2 miles in the hot sun in the summertime to get to, I don't even remember what the name of the place was. It was one of those video rental places. It wasn't one of the big names. It was a small one. Walk for 2 hours, get there. I'd work at the video rental place. I'd work at Subway right around the corner and then walk back home. My body was still raw and clotting. I was still passing pieces of my child, but I was forced to get up and get moving because she was not about to have me mope around the house the rest of the summer. So I did not have time to mourn the loss of my child, but I did avoid him the rest of that summer, and he passed that winter. And for a long time, I thought I was the one that killed him because I had never disobeyed him before. And he's all about love and light, and he's all about making sure that you live your life for yourself. And I avoided that man. And that haunted me for a very long time.
There's so much, Rep. I'm sorry. You keep going.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to get through it before I kind of like fall apart. So I went back to school that fall, and I did well. I mean, I switched majors with only 3 semesters to go, and I still graduated on time. I stayed back a year, and I was a residence director of 108 girls. I felt really good about that because I felt like I was doing something. I was helping counsel people. I was making sure that people weren't getting lost and homesick and falling into depression, because living away from home, that's a big deal for a lot of kids, especially if they come in from the country or whatever. Ended up moving in with him. I moved into Williamsburg, and I finally got a job and stuff. But before all of that, I had 2 major surgeries. I had impacted wisdom teeth. I took all 4 teeth out, and it was hard for me because my mom wasn't around. I did all of that by myself, and he would do stupid shit like talk to me about, oh God, I can't take you anywhere. You look crazy trying to, yeah, I don't have any teeth. It hurts. How else would I eat? He was telling me I look crazy the way I eat. 2003, I found I had a lump, and I was freaking out. It hurt, and I didn't know what to do about it. And finally, I had to go get it biopsied, and they said, well, you have the option of getting it biopsied once every 6 months, or you get it taken out. And I was like, please take it out, because I don't think I will survive if I have to worry about it every 6 months. And I did that without my parents. My dad to this day does not know. I could care less if he knows. But my mom was really upset when she found out that I did all of that without her. I still have the scar. And I was so scared. I wasn't sure if it would be a mastectomy. I didn't know if it would leave a huge scar. I ended up keloiding, but I freaked out. And he made fun of me again, like, God, get over it. You'll be all right. It's tiny. You can't even see it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll just move on. And it was tough for me. So finally, he asked me to marry him, but he asked me in a public place, and my entire being was screaming like, no, but I didn't want to embarrass him. So I said yes. And finally, shit came out. He wanted to be a state trooper. He didn't want to tell his parents. I had to nurse his mom through all that. She was freaking out because state trooper school was not easy, and he was on the road all the time. I tried my best to make it work. I made it so easy. We were talking about this before. I make it easy, right? I made it so easy. He didn't have nothing to do but to come home, eat dinner, and pay attention to me. He had nothing left to do. But he couldn't even do that. So finally, I left him behind and just working in timeshare. I was in Williamsburg still. I was working in timeshare. I had moved out because I didn't want to live in the house that we lived in together. But I didn't know how to manage my finances at that point. And I ended up evicted from the house that I was living in. And I was in Newport News at that point, the big bad news. And it was a rough neighborhood, and I was lucky that nothing else happened while I was there. I was just evicted. So I turned to a couple of my colleagues, and they were a pair of sisters, and they were like, you know what, we need help with the rent. Why don't you come live with us? So I did. I lived with them. But fast forward a couple of months, and the roof caught fire, and I was homeless again. And at that point, I happened to be talking to my now ex-husband, and what I saw in him was what I was missing in my father. He seemed to be a really good dad. He had 2 kids that he was shuttling around in his car, back and forth between work and daycare and their baby mamas. And yes, there were 2 baby mamas. And I kind of fell in love with the kids. I was missing my own kid at that point, and I felt like, you know what, I can do some good here. I can make a difference for these kids. It was a son and a daughter, and they lived like only children. They didn't know what it was like to live in a house together. They were constantly being dropped off at this mom's house and that mom's house, and I felt badly for them. So I took over. I filled in where I knew I could fill in, and we fell in love, I think. I don't know. Looking back, I'm not sure. But when that roof caught fire and I had nowhere to go, I moved in with him. It was like the next logical step, obviously. Moved in with him. But it was difficult because this man owned a nightclub in Newport News. He was known as Mr. Infinity because he ran Infinities, the club, and everybody knew him. Everybody knew Aaron. And I dealt with exes from everywhere. Where we moved, I didn't think anyone knew where we were, but I would come home or wake up in the morning and find notes on his car. Where we lived, like in the woods, basically, but people would find him still. And I was like, wow, okay. He knew this whole story about me and my ex and the abortion. He knew how I felt about that. And he knew that's why I was so attached to his kids. But lo and behold, I got pregnant again. But this time it was different. I was not near my family. He had successfully alienated me from all of my friends at work, talking about, oh, they want me. Are you sure you want to be talking to girls that are talking to me behind their back or trying to get at me behind? I was like, no, I don't need people like that. Cut them off. Easy. Cut them off. Got pregnant, and I was hoping and praying that he would change his mind about the abortion. And he got me in my car, and we were driving toward the clinic, and I was pleading with him on the interstate. And he pulled over in some shady ass like warehouse area. I've never been here before. He was driving the car. He pulled over, and he jumped out of the car. Like, he parked the car and he jumped out and he started walking away. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, really? Wait, are you seriously going to leave me? And I'm running after him down the street to get him to come back. And I'm pleading with him, look, I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't leave me, because I was alone. I was stupid. I mean, I had the keys to the car. I could have gone anywhere, but no. I had just lost 2 houses. I had just come out of a long-term relationship. I was alone. And I was weak. And I am mad at myself for being so weak because that was baby number 2. Go through a bunch of shit. I didn't know how to cook at the time. Aaliyah had eczema. She was used to eating McDonald's. They lived out of a car most of their lives. And whenever I tried to cook, he would say stuff like, oh, you don't have to eat it if you don't like it. Just throw it out and I'll go get you McDonald's. So I was fighting him constantly. She drank soda all day, every day, and her eczema was bad. This poor girl was scratching to death and she would be bleeding everywhere. And I told her, okay, look, why don't you drink 1 glass of water at every meal? And then you can drink whatever you want. But I know that if you start drinking water, nothing will quench your thirst quite like water does. And he would fight me. He would fight me tooth and nail. He would tell me things like, why are you torturing her? I'm looking at him like it's water. He's like, why are you torturing her? Why would you do this shit to her? You're so evil. What is wrong with you? And I'm thinking, wow, am I really evil? I had to really check myself.
I'm trying to fix her condition, but okay.
Oh, you best believe all that shit disappeared.
Oh, I know. Because my daughter she was born and we changed it because of diet, no medication.
And little Aaron, I'd have to go drop him off at his mom's house all the time. And he would pitch a fit. He would fall on the floor and scream and pitch a fit. He was 9 years old at the time and talk about, Pika, don't leave me. Don't leave me here. I don't want to be here. And I'm like, oh my God, your mom is going to kill me because I'm not telling you to do these things, but you're making a fool of yourself. You're like flipping out in front of her. But this is what I had to deal with. I had to let Aaliyah go home to her mom on the weekends. And when she would leave, she would say, bye, mommy, I love you. And when she came home, she would call me a bitch because her mom did not like the fact that she called me mom. So the rest of the week would be retraining her and helping her understand that I am not her enemy. I'm here to help her. I'm here to help her with her homework. I would do all of that. And every weekend she would go home and come back and treat me like shit. And unfortunately, in the state of Virginia, step-parents have no rights. I couldn't take her to the doctor's office to get her shots done before school started. I registered her for school because he didn't know what he was doing. But I couldn't even be in the room with her to get her shots done.
Wow.
But those were my kids.
Man, everybody that's listening, now, later, sometimes part of the reason why we have a problem telling our story is because there are often dynamics that are embarrassing as well, right? You don't want to say that, but when you talk to another woman and you start airing stuff out, you always find out that you have so much more in common. You really do. And so I was young, I was still in high school, but I do remember basically going through the same thing. It was like, oh, you pregnant. And by the time I was 15, since I was a teenager, there really wasn't a discussion. And I came from an upstanding Christian family, and all of a sudden their Christian values were compromised because God forbid they find out that little smart August that could quote the Bible was pregnant. They wanted it to look like everything was still good. So right after my 15th birthday, which I'm born right after Christmas, even though, no offense, but people don't have any money after Christmas because you spend all the money. For that, they scrounged up the money and they were like, no, you're getting an abortion. And I remember the lady at the clinic saying, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And I'm looking at her like, yeah, but then where will I live? Where will I live? And so I understand, being in the car, being alone and looking like every circumstance in your life was pointing at you're making it a choice that you didn't want to do. But I do remember being so hurt because I was just like you. For a season in my life, the only thing I wanted to do was have a kid. And when I did finally get pregnant after high school, I remember praying to God and saying, you're going to give me a daughter. I literally prayed. I said, give me a little me. And so it's funny that she's like my freaking twin when you look at us. But it was always because I wanted an opportunity to right a wrong. I didn't have a mom, so I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to fix. And that was really the driving force behind that. And so that first abortion really knocked me out because now I'm a murderer. Look at what I've done, and I've taken life, and all I wanted to do was not just give life, but I wanted to give love in every capacity that I hadn't received it. And that's why that broke me down so hard. And it was like, well, you got to get back up. You got to take your ass to school. And I even remember them, saying I had to go get on birth control, and they still didn't take me to the clinic. They sent me there by myself. And I was just sitting there thinking and I remember just sitting there in the office. So I'm letting somebody stick some coal, and they had the metal ones back
speculum.
yeah, you sticking this metal thing up in me and, then telling me, hey, this is what you take. And so there's so much stuff that we go through, in our upbringing as women that, it's time to stop saying it didn't matter. It's time to stop saying it wasn't that important. It's time to stop saying it's not that big of a deal. And, we're not going to, I love you. I'm not going to get into the big conversation about this, but when we first started our coaching relationship, one of the things that we really drilled down was the fact that a lot of these situations that you've dealt with, they stripped you of your self-worth. And it wasn't just the lack of self-worth in relationships. How do you become a woman in business and then say, I'm worthy of $500 for something, and then you go out there and you only charge $50?
That was a tough conversation, man. I did not want to talk money at all.
Yeah, because anything that has to, but it wasn't just the money though. It's really all about the worth and being able to say that thank you, Rachel. She said, sending love to you both. But if you can't have the conversation centered around the worth, the money, part of the money, part of the mindset block has to go to, we have to talk about your value, your worth. And when you're at your most critical ages, and it's not just me, it's other women that are going to be listening to this at such young critical ages, when something like that has been stripped from us, it automatically sets the stage going forward. The beautiful thing, though, that I love, the redemption in this entire story is, we pointed out some kind of, thick things in the middle. And, it was kind of like, you need to still deal with that. Don't be making yourself a martyr, or whatever.
Yeah.
But all things in time, right? Because this is a big step for you. And you didn't just shed a layer, you shedded a few layers just by opening up and having this conversation. But even more than that, look, this is why I admire you. Look at how powerful you are. Because no, you may not have it all together. No, there may be some areas where you're a little bit hypocritical with your own standards because you might not be processing that. But nevertheless, you still love. Nevertheless, you still show up. And you have been able to formulate such beautiful methodologies that are so enlightening in a joyous way to help people confront some of the biggest pains in their lives, because you have used your system. You wouldn't be able to function and do half of what you're doing.
It's how I healed myself.
If you hadn't went through the process, you hadn't felt it, and then had a revelation that somebody else needed this same methodology, the same help, the same love. And so we can get knocked down, but we don't get knocked out. And so, there's a scripture in the Bible that says a righteous man will be knocked down 7 times, but every time he will still get back up. And so you're still, and you're in eighth position. Eighth position is not down. Eighth position is you got back up. So you fell down, but you got up. You fell down, you got up. You fell down, you got up. You fell down, you got up.
If I get back up, y'all better run for cover.
and so here you still are. And so I just want to thank you for being willing to share so much. There's so many things, and ladies, we can't be not discriminating. I know there's a couple of men in the group that are going to see this. We're not discriminating against men, but this is just using the stereotypical vernacular. We don't have time to check nuts. We don't have the time to see who's got the biggest balls. We can't start saying, I'm not going to share my story because such and such, was raped for this long, or this person lived on the streets for that long. Your story is your story, and it has had an impact on you. And it's just about taking the silence off. It's about no more secret shame. It's about saying, no, I'm here. I'm meant to be here. And the fact that God still keeps letting me rise up, that means that I have a purpose, and I'm going to walk in that. And so every time we're brave and we shed a piece of the junk, we become stronger. I'm excited to see what transpires just because of this conversation. because I already know you. You're going to go sit, you're going to reflect, you'll leave some things alone and things will come to you because you've opened up your mind to that. But we can't hide in our pain anymore. And I want to thank you just for being willing to be here and to air it out, to talk it out and to say,
I need people to see that, yeah, I'm a coach. Yeah, my work is to help people grow and be strong and find their way somehow and still love.
mm-hmm.
And no, I'm not perfect. I'm still screwing up. I'm still stuck in my ways in some ways. But that doesn't mean I can't be great. That doesn't mean I can't keep speaking up and making sure that I share what I do know as I work through my own issues.
Yeah, we have to stay in a constant state of duality. You have both sides are always here. And you have to be comfortable with being with both. And so many women don't exercise their right and their strength because they're too busy looking at the areas in which they're flawed or what doesn't look right. You condemn yourself, you judge yourself. This little bitty hurdle, and I consider it little in respect to your greatness. This little hurdle that you've got to get over is in no comparison to the work you've done and the work that you will continue to do. It's not the time to describe it, but I said at the beginning of the podcast, you and I had a very extensive conversation yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I cried, y'all, because we're always warring with something. And maybe it's not necessarily always something that's going to necessarily bring you to tears, but we can't not show up because of our previous scars, our old wounds, and how we haven't arrived. Because here's what I do know about you. So now let's flip the script from the whole little contradictory, hypocritical thing. You and I both know that as we are going through our pain, part of what helps us heal is by helping other people.
Yeah, I get served when I serve. I really do.
Yes. Somebody's saying a couple of things.
Sure.
Tiffany says, you are always the teacher and the student at the same time. Yeah, there's a scripture in Hebrews that says that there is a time to teach and a time to be taught again. And I love that. Yeah, this is a recorded podcast episode. Imani said you have to go back to the beginning and listen. This may be one you have to digest a little bit at a time.
This is probably part one.
We'll come back, but we gotta have, we really shook some stuff up, and that really does have to be done.
I need y'all to recover.
we gotta go back and have some private conversation and really do some things, but we are gonna come back. You said, what is that they say? Our mess is our message. Yes. Let the mess become the message. Absolutely.
And that's why I want y'all to understand you are an expert on your life. Yeah. No one can be an expert on your life. You teach from your pain. No one knows your pain like you do. Yes, you are an expert. You go do what you need to do.
And one of the things you did the entire time we were talking, so you're like me, you're highly introspective. So you can't, unlike some people, like if they were on a talk show, they would just tell their story. And this happened to me when I was 3 and then 5 and then this and then that and that and that. You were like, well, this happened. And wait a minute, and let me preface this with that. And so that's what I was thinking. And then I did this when I was older. And so I'm connecting the dots. And then I can go back and see why I did this and so on and so forth. And so let's just make sure it's important that we make it very plain. You have talked about a lot of emotional crap that you have dealt with. That is why you're the expert on emotional intelligence. And Tiffany said you are the expert of your own life. 3 exclamation points with a hand clap up. And yes, Pika, and hell yes, and so on and so forth. So
you were saying you and I are highly introspective. Let me tell you how that is a problem. I have been to 3 different therapists, and every last one of them sit with me for like 2-3 sessions, and they were like, you don't need therapy. You're very self-aware. Well, shit, thanks. Why do you think I'm doing this work? Because the therapist told me I didn't need therapy, but I do. I need help. I need to get this out of my system. I need to make sure that wherever this started, I understand where it started and why it started and why I allowed myself to say things to myself to get me to the place where I felt like I was a victim. So if the therapist can tell me I don't need therapy, that means there is a gap in the system, and I need to plug that gap the best way I know how.
And
That's what I'm here for, y'all.
But see that beautiful thing that you put in there? The thing that pains us when we're looking for answers, that's what most of you guys end up doing. Having to be a victim of the gap doesn't feel good, but it's like, I love the movie Milan. And remember in the end when she finally comes back home after the war and the dad looks up at the one flower that finally blossomed, and he talked about how out of adversity.
The flower that blooms in adversity is the most beautiful of all. Absolutely.
Yes. And
it has more value.
Yes. Hello. And so our adversity and us dealing with the gaps in the system, because we are introspective, is how that same, they say it's a blessing and a curse. So it's so big of a blessing that people with their systems and methodologies can't see that we need help. But so it's a curse for that, but it's enough of a blessing for us to say, okay, but look, I'm introspective enough to know that I'm still not fucking okay. So bam, let me find the gaps. And as you as you're going through, you guys hear me say a lot that we have to learn to be comfortable with receiving the revelation and then getting confirmation. And so now that you have received multiple revelations about what this alternative process looks like, you've let yourself free from a layer of stigma by talking about your experience, your abuse, and all of these things when the student is ready to teach your peers. So somebody else that's on this planet, and thank God for technology now, all the way somewhere else will say, I heard about you. And then you end up getting that person in your life that can take you and take what you do and fill a gap and a void, and then you learn and you grow even the more. And then what you've got, you pass on to your clients and all of that. So this is the permission that we have to give ourselves to be the expert with what we have. Because the people that come to you, they're here and you're here. The person that's going to come to you is that you need is here and you're here.
Right.
It's only a few steps, and we say stuff like that, but we don't necessarily internalize the fact that I don't have to have the wisdom and insight of Elisa Nichols for me to walk in the boldness of my state right now. Because what I got right now is enough right now for the people that I'm meant to serve. And I'm going to continue to evolve. That's all of us. That's what this thing looks like.
And a real quick thing that I realized, fast forward to right now, right? All these things that I've lived through, I realized I didn't have to reinvent the wheel, and I could use the things I love already. The way you and I talk, we talk about movies, we talk about music. My therapy, the way I will help you figure it out, is I use what I love. I use movies and I use music. So I know there is a movie that you identify with that you can tell me about that we can have a conversation about, because guess what? That takes you out of your situation and it puts it onto another character as a third-party character. And you're not going to be so offended if I tell you that character had an issue, that character had an ego problem. But when you go away, when you walk away from our conversation, you're going to be like, yeah, there are a couple of things I need to address. There are a couple of things I realize. And that's what I want. I want you to know that there are so many different ways you can teach people. And what you love doing in your spare time is how you're going to bridge that gap.
Yes. That's the key right there that I love about what you do, is that sometimes people don't necessarily transition because they think they have to do something that's so dynamic and so out of the norm and adjust and readjust and adjust again, what they have in their life and their schedule. And you take some of the most normal everyday tasks. You were going to do this on the weekend anyway.
It's not so painful that way.
And look at this. And I'm going to let you use everyday life and some of the things that you probably use to numb out your pain. I'm about to make you flip the script, and I'm about to make you see and experience your pain. And I love that. That's why you're a speaker, Bika, because you're brilliant. I knew you were brilliant from day one. I saw it. Of course, you have the heart that matters the most to me in the beginning. But the way that you approach life, the way that you see things, your upbringing, all of that stuff, it's divine. It is absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to ask you to give some parting words in a second. So,
Sure.
I want you to be thinking about, with everything that you've shared and everything that you said today, what is going to be that ultimate piece of advice or word of wisdom that you're going to give the ladies once I pass the mic back. And so I'm going to say this to all of the people that are listening while you're contemplating that. Own your story. This right here, unfortunately, is going to air after the Learn to Love the Sound of Your Voice challenge that
Good.
will be happening. You know what? No, it's not. This is going to kill my ass.
You don't like keeping surprises. I know you.
I'm going to kill myself, but I'm going to edit and do what I got to do to get this out there on Wednesday, because there's pre-work that'll be done. And anybody that listens to this podcast episode, the links will be put on your respective platforms. But I want you to come into the Business Mastery Group for the Loving the Sound of Your Voice challenge. I put a post up a long time ago that said, if your past haunts you, you cannot be authentic.
Yep.
You have to own your story. And you also have to not trip off of your limitations. You need to be empowered by your strengths. We have to stop this, ladies, where we're looking at where we are inadequate, because at any given moment, there's this beautiful power with being able to say, I need a sister girl moment. And having a friend that you can reach out to and that you can talk to. And when we become entrepreneurs, we got to stop telling ourselves the lie that entrepreneurship is lonely and that it's difficult to find people that you relate to. No, it's just that you may have to get a little unrelated and more related to some other people. But get around people and let's start killing the power of our stories by no longer being silent. Those of you that listen to the entirety of the podcast today, that's what I want you to take away as your piece of wisdom. You're going to kill the power of the story by no longer being silent. You're going to walk in your authority with what you have and understanding it's an evolutionary process, but you're worthy now. You're enough now. The time is now for you to do what it was that you were called to do. And that the state of the world, we need it. We need it now more than ever. So that's what I have to say. And whatever Pika says from here, these are going to be your last parting words, and we're going to go ahead and shut the podcast down.
Honestly, the only thing I wanted to say something about unconditional love, and that's, it's great. But honestly, thinking back over everything that I've told you, and honestly, there's probably going to be a part 2 on this. Your silence serves no one. It's almost like holding your breath. It makes it heavy. You keep it in. It's a burden that you carry, but you don't have to carry it. And when you put it down, as in you let it come out of your mouth, you say it out loud, you give it words, it's almost like it loses half of its power. Mm-hmm. It loses half of that hold on you. And by saying it out loud, you inadvertently give someone else permission to lift their head up high, to meet your gaze, to smile a little bit, and to come out and tell their story too. I'm doing this because I want to give you permission. If I can live through all these things, something Pastor Deborah said this morning when I spoke to her, she said, they keep thinking these leaders have to be perfect. And that's the only reason they follow them is if they're perfect. But if they've been perfect, that means they haven't been to battle. I do not want a knight in shining armor. Give me the one that has dents and marks. He has a couple of scars. He's been through battle. He can actually protect me. He's not that he's never seen. Give me someone with skin in the game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I have skin in the game. I'm here because I want to make sure that you don't have to go through this if you don't need to. If you can sidestep this whole bullshit that I've been through, please do. Take what you can from all of these women. Sidestep as many of these minds as you can. And go live. Live. Something I mentioned in my podcast today is I am not fighting to add days to my life. I'm fighting to add life to my days, because I spent a lot of time with my head down, worried about what to do, how my husband's going to treat me, if I'm going to make it or not, that I did not live. Worrying is not living. I'm doing this for my daughter. And in the same regard, I'm doing it for you. The same stuff I'm leaving for her is left for you too. Go be your best self. Go live. Please live. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. Go live.
That's it. Oh, Tiffany said, show me your bumps and bruises.
We shall compare scars.
Wait a minute, she said, you ain't speak on what I've been through. You can't speak on what I've been through if you ain't been through it.
Yep.
Imani says, my father told me worrying is the antithesis of faith.
It's like a rocking chair. You do a lot of work, but you're not going nowhere.
Woo! She on fire, y'all, ain't she? She be
all the anecdotes are coming out now. See, this is what happens. It's August.
I knew what you meant, Tiffany. She putting in the correction in. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I love you. For everybody that was able to come and join us, thank
you guys for joining us. Yeah, absolutely.
Those of you in the group, you'll be able to go back to the group. And for the rest of the people, this is the first jump for Pika, because all of this is going to be aired on the podcast, and I will be putting it up on Wednesday. So we're out of here. We love you, ladies. Deuces.
Love you guys. Bye.
Thank you for joining me today. Remember to cultivate a mindset that is biased towards taking action. No bitching, whining, or complaining. Here, our mantra is, real women don't bitch, we get shit done. See you next week as I continue to bring you what you need to keep your head in the game and beast your business. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Would you like a specific topic covered? Have a question you would like answered live? Then head on over to realwomendon'tbitchpodcast.com. Subscribe to my email list, hit me up, and I got you. Interested in being a guest speaker? You walk the walk? Then you can sign up on the website too. This is your #1 advanced mental conditioning specialist for entrepreneurs, Mrs. Raw, Real, and Relentless. Signing out. Deuces.
Inspire, empower, grab your girls and soar a little higher. Unlock the fire in